I see you here. I wanted to talk about guilt today and how useless of an emotion it is. Okay, so this is a good one. So, what up? I am back again for another video. Before I get into the video, I just want to ask everybody to please give me a like on this video. Please subscribe, hit that notification button. So on one of my last videos, using slurs when we're angry, a user by the name of Locatus of Quails left me a comment, and the comment was about feeling weak when you're trying to be like the bigger person or when you're not responding to somebody's bad behavior using slurs. And so I wanted to make a video about that. I feel like this topic has like two layers to it, or two major layers to it, at least at an intro level, right? So there is political aspect of this conversation and governments and things like that, and there's also like personal, and they are very intertwined and they are very connected because it is about conflict resolution at the end of the day. So I think that a lot of the things that I will talk about as far as like interpersonally can be sort of transferable to like politics and stuff like that, but for the most part in this video I'm going to focus on the personal. Though I do not use slurs on people when they upset me, depending on what is happening, depending on why I am being upset. Is somebody saying something and it's hurting my feelings intentionally? Is somebody saying something and they are intentionally disrespecting me? Is somebody crossing my boundaries, my physical boundaries? Is somebody crossing my boundaries into like getting information from me or things like that? So there are all of these different like scenarios, or there are all these different sort of pathways, right? And each of them affects the way I respond. So for me, yelling, screaming, that's kind of like a last resort for me in general. I try not to get to that place because personally, I have a really loud voice. And yeah, when I get to a place of like complete rage and complete anger, that's not a good place to be. I don't want to be raging and angry. I don't want to scare my friends. I don't want to scare my family. That's not something that I just automatically get to. I get to that place when people are disrespecting me. I get to that place when people have crossed my physical boundaries. And for me, like physically fighting, being in a physical altercation is something, once again, that's a last resort. So that's not something that I just like pull out of my pocket and I'm like, okay, let's fight. Even though maybe when I was a kid I did, but like, like I'm an adult now, like you can solve things with your words, you can solve things by just walking away sometimes. But I do not fault people who do get into fights. I'm not trying to shame them. I'm just kind of talking about myself and my journey. I know that like when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, especially, I got labeled a hothead. And I'm an Aries, if all of you don't know. So it's a fire sign, and like a lot of times people label fire signs like, oh, you're a hothead, you're this, you're that. And so a lot of times what those labels can do is that they can actually instill this sort of shame into you, or this very like weird response. Like you might want to respond very loudly, vocally, or you may want to respond with your fists or whatever. What can sometimes happen, or what happened in my case, is I got these messages from my surroundings that the way I'm responding to being disrespected physically, a lot of times it was like about a physical boundary being crossed or something like that, or maybe like a slur being used. I got these messages saying that you responding that way, you sticking up for yourself, is wrong, it's bad, it's inappropriate, it's too much. And so what that can sort of create in like a lot of people is this like freeze sort of reaction. Like when you're being disrespected, instead of like just doing what you would have done, which is like, you start yelling, you start cursing or whatever, or you fight, you get frozen and you don't do anything, you don't say anything. And that's kind of like the opposite end of the spectrum, and you can sometimes now get in this pattern of being used to disrespect and just not saying anything or not doing anything. And that's not for everybody. Everybody is different. Some people kind of lose complete control of themselves when they get upset, and that is like one end of the spectrum. I don't know, I think that it's important to talk about like balance with these things. You know what I'm saying? And also like weighing the risks of, oh, like even if somebody physically assaults me, or even if somebody calls me a slur, I do have options. My only response is not only a physical altercation, though I do have that option if I so choose, right? I also have the option of running away. I also have the option of trying to de-escalate the situation. So I do have options, right? And knowing the consequences of each of these things. So I feel like I talked about fighting a lot. So on to like some bigger person stuff, right? Oh, like just be the bigger person, let it go. No, I am not going to advocate for you to tolerate abuse. I'm not going to advocate for you to tolerate disrespect. And that's from everybody. That's from, you know, bosses and coworkers. And obviously in various scenarios, the way that you approach these situations, the tone that you approach these situations has to be a particular kind of way. If your family depends on your income, up and quitting a job where you're disrespected might not be something that you can even do. That might be so tied to your very livelihood, so you can't just up and quit, right? You can talk about how this doesn't make me be my best self, this doesn't help me work better, this actually impedes me. And if you have a good boss who actually cares about leadership and being a good leader, they would care. And if you don't, then that might be a sign that, oh, okay, well, maybe I need to start looking for another job somewhere else. So it's all about honoring yourself and not thinking in extremes. So just because somebody disrespects you does not mean you need to fight them physically every single time. And just because they disrespect you and you don't want to fight them doesn't mean that you shouldn't say anything and you shouldn't do anything, right? Somebody crossing your boundaries is not right. So there are many options that you have in that scenario. I'm not a fan of like phrases like, oh, be the bigger person. I don't like things like that. I don't like the ideas that I associate with being the bigger person. I don't go out of my way to hurt people. I don't go out of my way to disrespect people or offend people. But, you know, being in a long-term relationship with somebody, like friendship, family, whatever, you're going to say and do things that upsets me. Do you mean to? No, I don't mean to. So you're gonna have to apologize and take responsibility, right? And like figure things out. But what I'm trying to say is like, I don't go out of my way to do that stuff. I don't abuse people, and I don't think that I should be abused either. I respect everyone, and I think that everyone should respect me. And if that doesn't happen, then okay, well, we're gonna have to figure out what's gonna happen. So are you gonna get out of my life? Are we going to have a argument and a disagreement where I'm not using slurs, but I'm telling you like the way you're speaking to me or what you're doing is unacceptable and something has to change. You have to change your behavior, or you cross my physical boundaries and now I'm gonna go upside your head. That's some of my perspective on like the personal level. And just briefly about the political, it's like for so long in this country, there have been so many different ways this country has tried to take us out, take out Black people in particular, take out LGBT people, take out poor people, and just completely discard us. And there are all these little ways that like we're being taken out. And even outside of the police brutality and the police murder, there are all these little ways that it's killing your spirit. And it is such a tool of an abuser, of an oppressor, to then gaslight you when you respond in a way that they do not like, or in a way that really starts to challenge and shake up their entire foundation. And so that just kind of reminds me, well, maybe if you change the system, maybe if people weren't being taken out in all these little ways, maybe this wouldn't happen. Maybe if the system was replaced with something else, we would be somewhere else. You know, you wouldn't have these responses. I just want to remind you of like when I was younger and people would call me a hothead for responding physically to someone who crossed my boundary, right? Who crossed my boundary, and they would call me the hothead. No. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about what I said and what I did, because somebody just called me a slur and somebody physically assaulted me. Worry about that, right? Worry about the inciting incident. Don't worry about how I respond to it. Don't gaslight me and don't give me these labels based on how I responded to my boundaries being crossed and violated and disrespected and dehumanized. Really, don't respond to me, change the system, right? Change that behavior over there. So that's kind of like the video. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. Leave me some hearts. And also, if you want to support me in any way, my Venmo and my Cash App information is right below. And yeah, I will see you all next time. Peace.